Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm here with my review of Weapons. This is the second feature film from writer-director Zach Cregger, who made his debut with Barbarian in 2022. I adored Barbarian, one of my favorite movies that year. I thought it was such a wonderful debut as a writer-director for someone who has plenty of experience, making other stuff in TV. He had a big comedy background, obviously, but I thought that was such a self-assured, clever film, Barbarian, and was really excited for Weapons, and it has lived up to me being excited for it. If you've seen the trailers, you know that this has a really intriguing setup. Small town where 17 school children, nearly an entire classroom, all vanishes, all get up in the middle of the night, run out of their house with no explanation. And the aftermath of that, and the questions, what has happened to these kids? Where are they? What caused them to do this? The fact that there is one kid in this class who didn't run away. Why is that? And all the suspicions that arise around this. A lot of it focused on Justine, the teacher of these kids, played by Julia Garner. This movie is formatted interestingly in a way that you might not guess from the trailers, which is, I'll say like Magnolia, because Zach Cregger has directly said Magnolia was an influence on this movie. Like Magnolia, plenty of other movies have done this. This is overlapping stories, interconnected characters where we're going to focus on one of them at a time, often seeing the same events, how we got to those events, but from the different perspectives, and kind of unfurl in an interesting way the story and the explanations for what's happening. So it doesn't even go for a big, dun 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 reveal. It goes for a sort of gradual reveal, a putting the pieces together reveal. And I think it really works in that regard. I was really into this movie from the get-go. We kind of begin with the focal point and the two leads, the two, actors that are listed first, which is Julia Garner's character and then Josh Brolin's character. He plays Archer, who is one of the dads whose kids has gone missing. And he is one of the people who is the most angry and suspicious about Justine, saying, hey, all these kids were in this woman's class, so what the hell happened? What did she say? Did she do something? So we get their stories, but then we get more of the townspeople's stories and start to kind of build up the entire sequence of events, slowly but surely. If I had one notable complaint about this movie is we probably have one or two more stories than we need. The movie feels a little overlong. Feel like it could have been trimmed back a little bit. And when I looked back at all the different characters we got, I thought, maybe there was one or two that are extraneous. Specifically when it comes to Alden Ehrenreich's character, who is Paul, a local police officer, and Austin Abrams' character, he plays Anthony, who is a sort of drug addict, local thief and drifter. Those two characters, their stories interweave in a lot of big ways, but we spend a lot of time kind of getting to know them separately that maybe could have been condensed. I felt like, maybe we didn't need both of them to get their own sort of segments. Even though I like both these actors and I like both these performances, and actually there's a couple great moments with both of them, but I thought maybe there's a way that we could have just made two stories into one story a little cleaner here. Otherwise, though, I think this is an excellent film. Cast are all great here. A really strong ensemble that includes people like Benedict Wong and Toby Huss. Amy Madigan has a crucial role, and she is awesome. And Julia Garner is just such an impressive actress. It's funny, I haven't seen Ozark. I haven't seen the show that really kind of made her career and made her, an Emmy-winning, acclaimed actress. I knew her from The Americans, where she had a small recurring role, but just in the movies I've seen her in, and even just this year, between Fantastic Four, Wolfman, a movie I liked a lot more than most people, and now this, she really holds the screen. There's something just really sort of gripping about her as a performer, and even though I appreciate that this is a ensemble that's jumping back between all these characters and all these performances that are really strong, I kind of felt she was the most compelling one. I was always happy to get back to her because she's such an interesting performer. And she and Josh Brolin have a really good dynamic here because their characters are so at huge odds with each other, but sort of how their stories collide is very interesting. It is a slow build. Maybe the trailers oversell sort of that it will be like intense start to finish, because it is more of a sort of character study for much of it that's also giving you the pieces of the puzzle while building towards something bigger and also showing increasingly weird, uncomfortable, and then outright sort of disgusting and insane things happening. We begin with almost a promise. We have this voiceover, which you've heard in the trailers, a narrator.
This is a true story that happened in my town.
A kid who is telling you that a lot of crazy things happened and a lot of people died in weird ways. So you're kind of waiting to see who are these people that are going to die and what are the weird ways they're going to die. And it makes you wait for that. But when it happens, it's a pretty good payoff, I think. One thing I think that is so impressive, though, now that we've had 2 movies from Zach Cregger, is his mastery of tone. I'm going to mention Wednesday, as in the TV series here briefly, only because season 2 of that debuted this week. I reviewed that for IGN, if you want to check that out. But I think Wednesday is a very messy show. And one reason I think it's messy is it doesn't do a good job of shifting between tones, of having really macabre, dark things happen, and then shifting into more broad comedy. And you watch Zach Cregger's movies and you see it can be done. It's tricky, it's difficult, and it's really impressive when someone like him can make that turn and make it feel seamless. Because like Barbarian, this is a really funny movie. And that's interesting because, again, you wouldn't know that from the trailer necessarily. But I also wouldn't describe this as a horror comedy. I'm wearing a t-shirt for What We Do in the Shadows. That's the kind of horror comedy. When someone says horror comedy, I think they think of something like that really is sort of farcical with horror elements intertwined. And then you've got something like Scream, say, which is, a lot of comedy, a lot of sort of self-aware comedy, while also playing a lot of the horror stuff very straight. But Zach Cregger stuff is different in that, it really just sort of interweaves. And I think it does that thing of, presenting a world that awful things can happen in, and that there is weight to those things, but funny things can happen too, and treating it like life, where awful things and funny things can happen. Now, in his movies, the things that are happening are bigger than life and sort of crazy, and there's a lot of sort of strange events around it all, but there is genuine huge laughs in this movie, and then there are scenes that I was absolutely petrified. Lots of great tension, some great jump scares, a lot of build up, people looking in places they're not supposed to be looking, things creeping up on them. He is very good on just the basic horror level of building up those moments. And then his comedy background, he's very good at having a lot of funny interplay, having characters that are just funny characters, that are funny people in the world they live in. And then those scenes, they can just shift back and forth. The conclusion of this movie has some events that are wild and are definitely funny on some level, and I think are, I don't know if meant to be funny, allowed to be funny. I think it's not going to shock Zach Cregger that some people are going to laugh at some of these moments, because it's like, this is insane what's happening, and then it'll veer into, oh wow, that's horrific what's happening now, where that went. And I'm continually impressed by how he makes those shifts. Movie called Weapons is called Weapons for a reason. There's a couple reasons. I mean, one is a very plot-specific one. There is an explanation for sort of why weapons make sense within the lore of this movie eventually. But also I think that there's a pretty obvious allegory here for sort of school shootings, the aftermath of a tragedy. The people left behind, the town, how they're affected. And again, I realized talking about how this is a movie with, bigger than life horror elements and gore and also comedy, maybe that could feel like off-putting, or like this is not a good fit if you're going to also put in this sort of allegory for school shootings. But I think it plays well. It doesn't undermine any sort of allegory. It doesn't feel like it's making light of it. It never feels exploitive. And actually, the ending of the film felt a little abrupt to me initially, and the more I thought about it, the more weight it carried because of that metaphor. Again, I think it is just presenting, like, look at where these people are in the aftermath of what in this movie is a, sort of crisis that is not really related to something we've had happen in real life, but that you can take that, that connection, that feeling that it evokes to real life and see it happen. But, life goes on, and life goes on with a lot of, hurt and tragedy and people dealing with things in different ways. And we see the characters here turn to alcohol, and they turn to conspiracy, and they turn to anger, but also, funny things keep happening too. because that is life, and it is a big sort of mashup of all of that. Besides the Magnolia influence and feeling that sort of stylistic imprint here, there's also a bit of Stephen King to the vibe of this, because it's this small town. There are kids involved. You're really kind of seeing the inner workings of these characters and what their lives were before and after, these crazy horror events happened. Definitely evoked a lot of King stories for me in a cool way. I just thought that this was a great sophomore film for him. If I'm ranking them, maybe I still like Barbarian a little more. There was something about the discovery of Barbarian and where that went that I think maybe thrilled me on an extra level. But I still thought Weapons was great. It is another really cool movie from a filmmaker that I'm now extremely excited to see everything he does going forward, because he really proves, once again, it's very funny how we keep seeing these people with comedy backgrounds shift into horror, and how that really works. I mean, a million people have talked about this and how there's a lot of similarities and sort of building up the tension of the setup of a joke and the setup of a horror moment are pretty similar, and how that can work well for people like Jordan Peele and now Zach Cregger to show how if you've honed your skills on one side, you can deliver them on the other. But yeah, just really cool to have guys like that are working in this space and doing creative things with horror, a genre that I love a lot. So yeah, really dug Weapons. It is in theaters this weekend and well worth checking out. All right, if you can like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. See you next time.